Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. Excuse the darkness, it's night time and this is a very old tablet. Fingers crossed the laptop comes tomorrow. I'm not saying it is, but fingers crossed. And that noise is the aircon. It's extremely hot here. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, Instagram and TikTok at Movies TV Mad 555. And this is your Suicide Squad update. 2 articles to read for you. The Suicide Squad producer rules out connections to previous films. The Suicide Squad is definitely not a reboot, but it's also not a sequel. This is the message producer Peter Safran hammered home to members of the press on the film set back in 2019. Safran continually promised we don't address it when faced with questions about how James Gunn's new DC Comics movie will connect to or acknowledge the original Suicide Squad movie from David Ayer. Safran said this is as though it were an easy thing to comprehend, a movie which returns cast members as a sequel would, but simultaneously acts as though the predecessor does not exist. It seems like a point moviegoers will better comprehend upon seeing the movie, as the new adventure is also promised to not contradict previous stories from the original Suicide Squad. Birds of Prey or other DC Comics titles involving the Suicide Squad's characters. We don't address it any tangible form, Safran says. Yes, they're the characters, the actors that played them in the first movie, but we really wanted to make sure that this stands on its own 2 feet. So again, it's why you can't really call it. It's not a sequel, but there are some characters that were in the first movie, right? So it's not really a full reboot either. So we just call it James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. When asked if the events of the first film have happened, we don't address it. Is there any thread connecting the Suicide Squad to Margot Robbie's Birds of Prey? Not really. No, it's very much a standalone film. The concept of a Suicide Squad, a group of jailed supervillains who have bombs implanted into their heads with the opportunity to listen to Amanda Waller's commands and reduce their sentences or die, is not going to be a new thing. It's business as usual, as Safran explained. Though they won't be calling back to previous on-screen events, Safran sees the newcomers as an opportunity to set the film apart from the 2016 film while also keeping actors and characters which fans enjoyed around. For example, the film once considered having Will Smith reprise the role of Deadshot, but a quick move from the pitch to production didn't allow for the schedule to align. I think that what really distinguishes the characters from whoever they were in the first movie is James' writing, the way he writes these characters, Safran said. Again, he was not beholden to anything that existed from the first film, so he really got to give his version of this is what Rick Flag would be. This is what Harley Quinn would be. This is who Boomerang would be. So everything from dialogue, backstory, wardrobe, it's all just whatever James felt best suited these particular characters. Fans can see this formula at work in recent DC Comics movies. For example, Aquaman, Shazam and Birds of Prey did little to tie themselves to the Man of Steel, Batman v Superman or Justice League or Suicide Squad movies before them, which could have easily had strong ties, references or influences on each film's characters. I think Suicide Squad very much is in line with what we did on Aquaman and Shazam, in the sense that the ideas make a great standalone movie, Safran said. He would know, having served as producer on both of those films. That's what we're doing here. We're just making a great movie. We hope, but that's the focus. It doesn't have to live within some broader universe automatically. Safran also described Gunn's work in this R-rated romp as a different perspective and point of view than what David Ayer did. The cast members, meanwhile, have varied takes on the subject. Javelin actor Flulu Borg admits he never saw the original film, while Peacemaker actor John Cena says the divisive reactions from critics and fans gave him an added motivation to jump in and change minds with this new film. For more info about comicbook.com's time on the set of the Suicide Squad, check out the 11 best secrets we learned from the cast and crew. Right, time to address this bullshit. Right, they're saying that Birds of Prey has no references to the Suicide Squad, apart from Margot Robbie and the film mentioning Jared Leto's Joker and even having a double of Jared Leto's Joker in the film. So there are actually references to that film. Now I understand they want to distinguish themselves, but we were hearing a lot of this about Wonder Woman 84. It's a different movie, and it's a different movie. It's not that movie. It's a film that stands on its own. It's not a sequel. And you should already kind of have some red flags here. Even though I've seen a 90-minute test screening and I liked what I saw, these are red flags for sure. We saw what happened with Wonder Woman 84. They were so toxic about keeping away from the superior first movie. The first Wonder Woman film is one of the best CBMs ever made, and they wanted very, very few connections to the first movie. That was a mistake. They went too far away from the movie. They should have stayed near that timeline so we could have seen those amazing supporting characters from the first film. They messed up. Right, as I say, I've seen 90 minutes of this movie. It's very, very good, very entertaining. What Gunn's done with this film is sensational. But at the end of the day, keep on telling us that this is not a sequel, that it doesn't go back to anything that's happened in the other film or in Birds of Prey. Fair enough, I get it, right? But this is a sequel. It doesn't have to go back to any of the threads of the original film. You are using those characters. They were in the first film. Now, you may not want to tread on the first movie. By the way, I think there probably will be a few hints. I didn't see them in the test screening, but I think there will be a few hints to what was in the previous film. You know, there's a relationship there between Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn and Joel Kinnaman's Rick Flag. So I think the desperation to say we have nothing to do with that movie that people didn't like is, I don't like it. I don't like it. It comes across toxic, and at the end of the day, let people decide for themselves. But this is a sequel, it is a continuation. Once you use 4 characters and 4 actors from the original movie, it's a sequel. It's a continuation. Whether you reference those stories and characters from their first portrayal or not, they're there. It's a continuing story. It's the next adventure. It's as simple as that. Right, let's go to the final article about James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. The Suicide Squad set visit interview director James Gunn. Screen Rant speaks with director James Gunn on the set of The Suicide Squad, finding out how the film and team compare to his MCU Guardians and more, by Andrew Dice of Screen Rant. Director James Gunn made history when he left Marvel to create his own version of The Suicide Squad, and now that his future with both studios seems as guaranteed as Hollywood can offer, he doesn't have a future with Disney or the MCU. As you well know, once he does Guardians 3, he is done with them. The anticipation surrounding his new vision for the DCEU supervillain strike team seems to be shared by the writer and director himself. The mastermind behind the MCU's Guardians of the Galaxy is no stranger to being underestimated, having turned one of the seemingly riskiest Marvel properties into a certified billion-dollar franchise. With a return to the MCU for Guardians 3, Gunn's next project, even still the challenge of crafting a wholly original entry in DC's movie universe as neither a sequel nor a reboot to a critically divisive but commercial blockbuster, even for Gunn, that's one-of-a-kind challenge. Screen Rant had the chance to visit the set of The Suicide Squad back in November 2019 to see and hear firsthand how Gunn's unique storytelling was reshaping the property, not to mention how this new step in the director's career was already delivering more fun than any project that came before. Having only a month of filming at the time, but a year of planning what his 70s war movie throwback to the original John Ostrander Suicide Squad would look like, and still in the fallout of being fired and rehired by Marvel Studios, the only The only perceptible emotion from the director was enthusiasm for bringing the Suicide Squad to life. James Gunn, it's great that you guys could be here. It's been a complete blast so far. It's been great. It's been really the most fun I've ever had in my life on a movie, without a doubt, although today is stressful. What can you tell us about the story you're telling here? Yes, so I'm a huge fan of the original John Ostrander run of the Suicide Squad, in which he created the whole Dirty Dozen as a DC supervillains team, and I don't think that it's so much an interpretation of what he wrote, but I do think of it as a continuation of what he did. Now that's interesting. So he's making a big claim here that he's continuing Ostrander's original comic. Wow, that's interesting. More of a sequel to Ostrander's comic than the first Suicide Squad movie. That's ambitious. And R-rated, then it would be this movie. I think it's very much in line with that, and that's what he did when John, who actually has a little cameo in the film, so he made sure to get his hero involved, which is great. When he was first putting this team together, he was only able to get certain characters, and it really was for him the fun of taking these characters that weren't as well known and developing them in a real way. To me, that's one of the greatest superhero runs of any comic series, and to keep that sense of it being a caper film, a war caper film, a lot of the film is within the genre of the war caper film, which is not really something that's existed for a long time. But in the 60s, the late 60s, with films like The Dirty Dozen and Kelly's Heroes and Where Eagles Dare, that was a real vibrant genre, one of the biggest genres in the world. You kind of take that engine and then add the fun of the Suicide Squad to it. When you were officially invited to come in and play in the DC Warner Brothers sandbox, what were you most excited about? Well, basically DC came and said, hey, what do you want to do? Anything. And at first I really honestly didn't think it was going to be Suicide Squad, but I was playing with a few different ideas and a few different DC properties. And this was the one that just took off. I just fell in love with this particular story that we're telling right now, and I fell in love with some of the characters and the way we could do it. Being able to tell it's not a superhero movie, obviously it's a supervillain film, but to be able to tell a movie like this in a completely different way, and in a lot of ways, like when I came into the two Guardians, being able to do a space opera in a totally different way. This is my way to do a war film in a completely different way. I thought it was something that I could do and surprise people by giving them something completely different than what they expect. Like we did with Guardians, people saw that trailer for the first time with these weird characters in prison. What was going on with them, to be able to do something like that again, where people might be expecting it to be like Guardians, they might be expecting it to be like the first Suicide Squad, they might be expecting it to be like whatever, but it's not like any of those things. So let me repeat to you what I've already told you. Those people who doubt I've seen this test screening, I've told you before, don't expect this film to be like Guardians. And James Gunn, on Screen Rant, during the set visit, has confirmed that his Suicide Squad movie is nothing like his Guardians movie. Put that in your pipes and smoke it. Can you tell us the main thing that makes this a completely separate thing from Guardians? The vibe and the tone will feel like it, so say that again, separate thing from Guardians. The vibe and the tone will feel like it's DC's Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, it's a much rougher film than Guardians of the Galaxy. Everything is. It's almost completely practical. The biggest sets ever on almost any film ever. I was able to take all of the heads of departments that I've used on other films and just do a best of Dan Sudik, who's doing our special effects. Was just saying this morning, he's doing more special effects, more live special effects in this film than all of the Marvel movies he's ever done combined, which is very single Marvel movie that was shot in Atlanta. So it's just a much more grounded, darker film. Gorier, it's gorier. A more grounded, darker film. So that you people who think this is a Marvel movie, a Marvel style movie, again, you are wrong. Is there anything that this R rating is going to allow you to do that you couldn't do on The Guardians? Well, it just allows me to do anything I want, but it really is more grounded story. It's a sad story. And one of the most fun things is, I think at the end of the day, even though we do kill Guardians of the Galaxy, we kill some of them. But in this movie, it really is about you don't know who's going to get killed. And I think with the Guardians, you start out sort of knowing these are guys that may have different problems, but at the end of the day, they're all really good people. This isn't the case with this. It's a much more complicated story. Some of these characters may end up being good. Some of them are definitely not good. And some of them, most of them, are somewhere in between with different shades of grey and moral drama. The moral play, the fact that you don't know anything that's going to happen. I don't think most people think that Star-Lord's head is going to explode in the middle of the movie, but any of these characters, their heads could explode in the middle of the movie. And so it's that unknown, that being on edge, that really not knowing what's going to happen is much different than the Guardians. Whether it's commitment to making a team of truly despicable anti-heroes or villains, or simply the thrill of never knowing which member of this mostly new squad will hang on to their heads, fans of both Marvel and DC are in for something new. Stay tuned to Screen Rant for more of our coverage from the set of the Suicide Squad. So, very interesting as far as I'm concerned, because a few things that he hasn't said out loud before, that this is nothing like the Guardians of the Galaxy, apart from a few frames that you might find familiar, like the group walking together. That's something we saw in Guardians, wasn't it? But in terms of this movie, it's very different. He said it's a sad story, a grittier story, a dark story, and, you know, I'm happy that he's saying this. I know this already, but people don't get it. This is not a light, fluffy, watered down movie. There will be gags, but there also will be tragedy. Anyone could die in this movie. Everyone could die in this movie. And yes, let me be absolutely fucking clear with you now. Harley Quinn could be killed off in this movie. Now, we are heading towards a multiverse strategy. We are heading to the universe being rebooted. This is why Gunn is allowed to kill everyone or anyone he wants. Because he knows and the studio knows, once Barry reboots this universe, anyone can come back. This is what's going on here. And it's something that people are watching this film and are getting ready for the future of the DC live action universe are going to have to become comfortable with, or you're going to have to leave. So what did you think of those two articles? I enjoyed reading them to you. This and that was your Suicide Squad update. So please comment down below. Like, share and subscribe. @MoviesTVMad on Twitter. @MoviesTVMad555 on Instagram and TikTok. Click that little notification bell so you never miss this perfection. And I will be back in the next video. See you again soon. I really enjoyed doing this.